Hello, Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for To Your Eternity, chapter 149.5. When we last left our heroes, Fushi was still kind of struggling with the idea that Gugu and Hyro will eventually leave him. He finds Tonari in the school library, and Tonari says that she has no real plan to leave anytime soon. As we kind of discussed, she's like 14 again. And is not really thinking about that yet, but she might at some point, which is really not what Fushi wants to hear. It is what he needs to hear, though. He then goes home. He sees Kai and Hyro kind of existing in the world, getting further and further away from him. He comes home. He sees March and Echo, who are successfully learning to use chopsticks. Fushi runs out. He has this whole vision of March growing old and everyone's saying goodbye to him, and he kind of breaks down as he's just completely unequipped to deal with the fact that people leave. And yeah, that's where we left off. So let's jump right on in. We open with Fushi, at least on the surface, recovered from last chapter's incident with like a bunch of laundry. I'll help you, Gugu. And Gugu looks down at him. Oh, thanks. And they're hanging the laundry outside. He then grabs a vacuum cleaner from Hyro. I'll do that. And then a table from Kai. I'll do it. And then is serving food to Tonari, March, and Echo. And then March just kind of smiles bright at him. It looks like you're in a good mood today, huh, Fushi? And Fushi just smiles down at her, lying through his fucking teeth. Yeah! Yeah, this is clearly some kind of maybe even subconscious attempt at getting everyone to stay. You know, maybe making them so dependent on him that they can't leave, which is incredibly unhealthy. But anyway, we'll see. Anyway, chapter 149, The Path, Part 2. We see Fushi kind of standing outside, sometime after that last bit, just kind of thinking, and the horse kind of nuzzles up against him, and Fushi kind of rubs her chin. Hey there, isn't it funny? I started trying to get on everyone's good side after all this time because it started feeling like they're gonna leave me. Yeah, at least he's aware of it. At least he's aware. I don't think he's quite aware how fucked that kind of is, you know. But also, it's sort of it's not. It feels kind of manipulative, but I don't think it is from Fushi's perspective. Maybe on some level, he thinks they're going to leave him because they hate him. Maybe that doesn't quite mesh with what we've been seeing, but that's the vibe that line gives me, right? Because, he's doing all these good things, maybe they'll like me so much that they'll just stay. Mm-hmm. And the horse just kind of hops. I know that, not a whole lot of Pyoran has, survived into the horse, I think. But I'm kind of curious how Pyoran herself would kind of react to all this. I've got you? Or were you just laughing? And then Fushi kind of goes on, maybe it's weird for me to think there was no point living without everyone. Hold on, sorry, my laptop is being fucking weird there. Alright, anyway. You know, March said something. Oh no, this is Bon, who's just showed up. You know, March said something similar once. That she wouldn't be happy at all to grow into an adult without you. Okay, I just read the next panel, and we're going to get to that in a sec. But Fushi just shocked to see Bon back. Bon, you're back? She tried desperately to stop you, but you ignored that and slept to continue your fight. This is in the aftermath of Renril. And Fushi kind of just says, yeah. Then she took poison and killed herself. Okay. So I talked back in my very, very first To Your Eternity video, back in March, before I even started doing the reviews, that the worst scene in this entire series was 116, where they casually mention that someone else poisoned March for no real reason. But Bon here turns that on its head. Says that March killed herself, which is fucked for a 4-year-old to do. I'm not quite sure I buy a 4-year-old killing herself. But if that is true, I don't know. And Fushi just kind of stunned. Huh? Kills herself? And Bon just goes on, yes. She committed suicide right at your side. She didn't suffer. I mean, it's a suicide in the same way Bond committed suicide at the height of Renrail. How, like, he knew he'd come back. But either way, it's still really fucked. And Fushi's just kind of frozen there as Bond goes, do you mind if I continue? Oh, okay. I do, though, before he continues, want to talk about Bond for a second, very briefly. Because Fushi, all through this arc, and even before this arc, has sort of been trying to rely on Bond as his crutch, right? He was trying to get Bond's opinions about the knocker problem. And now, again, as Fushi is sort of dealing with these problems, people are going to leave me, it's Bond who kind of swoops in, like a borderline Deus Ex Machina, to at least attempt to solve all of Fushi's problems. I'm curious if it will work, though. Either way. Okay. Hyro played the villain, so if you ever questioned him, he could claim he didn't understand the pain in people's hearts. Hyro saw it through, as did March. But Tonari, who made the poison, suffered. Okay, so we're getting all kinds of things. I'm not quite sure what Hyro did here. Hyro played the villain, so if you ever questioned him, he claimed to understand the pain in people's hearts. And actually, that looks like Fushi as Bond. This might not be the moment when Fushi was asleep for 500 years. This might be earlier in Renrail. I almost wish my Renrail was a little bit more firm, because I'm just not great at remembering Renrail. It's an arc I'm not the biggest fan of. But anyway, Hyro did, I guess, presented the idea to March, is my guess. But Tonari made it. And of course she would suffer. I told her there was no reason to feel bad about it, but nothing convinced her. I mean, she did make poison for a 4-year-old. Like, that's still fucked. Seeing that, Hyro showed me what to do. One day in the future, Fushi will surely awaken. And for that day's sake, we must spread the legend not of Fushi the demon, but Fushi the Messiah. Okay. Alright. Well, we did get that bit a while back about, you know, the person going on about the Fushi zealots protesting the cutting of the roots. But we haven't really seen Fushi as a religious figure in the present era. And it's weird that, like, the idea that Fushi could be a religious figure, given that he's still calling himself Fushi, and no one in Yanome seems to find that odd, besides the people who, like, know that he's the real Fushi. Like, the teacher called him Fushi last chapter. I don't know. The religious part of the series never quite clicked for me. Anyway, for that day's sake, we spread the legend not of Fushi the demon, but of Fushi the Messiah. Gugu was the first martyr. He fought to defend you from those that hated you. Okay. Oh, right, because Gugu did die at some point, going back to 116. After his death, the country of Sonia took over management of your body directly, and Messar kept watch over Sonia's movements. He had never had much of a will to live, but Messar connected the lands of Oralis and Sonia, and Kai kept me connected to Oralis. Why didn't Bond need Kai for that? I thought that Bond was... Like, didn't Bond go back to Oralis after the siege? Am I misremembering that? Maybe I should, like, reread 116 after this and, like, compare and contrast. This very much feels like it's deliberately connecting to that chapter. I don't know. But there were many battles with the Church of Bennett's parish countries. Each time our friends went to the battlefield, but none of them died. By the time the fighting settled down, a time of rest finally came to us, who had lived so long. In the end, I was last. And we see this image of the younger Bond. Oh, it's Bond as in his spirit form after he's died. And he comes back to where Fushi is sitting. And he sees all the spirits just kind of chilling with Fushi. Just waiting. We all waited for you. For centuries. And that's where we leave off. Okay. So... very much a callback, very much like an alternate version of what we saw in 116. And after I finish this video, I'm going to go back and read 116 again to sort of see how the story has changed and the version we saw. Because I think, I might be mistaken here, because it's been a while, I admit. but I thought that 116 was kind of delivered by narrator, right? All the sort of exposition of what happened to everyone was kind of delivered by a narrator. And so it's kind of odd that any of that would be false. That, like, March didn't commit suicide in particular, or March was not killed, she committed suicide, which is still really, really fucked. Especially with, like, some of the you know, what the Knockers have kind of been doing in this arc with, like, talking about suicide, right? I don't know, I'm trying to connect the whole Guardian Knocker saying we should kill people who want to die because they're already dead, and and the concept of, you know, the gang prepping a death for March, which is just really fucked. I don't know. I do, though, want to go back to March in a different way than just the suicide thing, which, like, we should definitely have a discussion about at some point, I think. But I want to talk about comparing March to Fushi. Fushi right now, and Fushi post Shananda, like I kind of brought up in my video last night. It was only yesterday. But that, you know, neither of them really had a way of coping with the idea of people leaving, right? Like, the solution they gave March is no better than anything Fushi has. Like what they should not have done was kill March. That was the worst take, and nothing this video gives us has changed that. But, like, you know, just like Fushi is completely unable to cope with people leaving him, March was unable to cope with Fushi leaving her, and what she needed was to move on. You know, not saying don't come back as a spirit eventually, you know, do the same things she's done now, but even more kind of contentious if she comes back as a child, as Fushi would have made her do. But, like, she should have had a life. And then maybe she comes back in the present, but, like, none of them helped her move on. Which is kind of damning of everyone here, you know, of Hiro, Ban, and Tonari especially, that they, like, very much colors my interpretation of them in particular, sort of guiding this 4-year-old to suit, like, it's fucked. It's really fucked. And I don't quite know how I feel about it being given this sort of hopeful scene at the end, where they're all sort of, you know, hanging out with Fushi, and it's kind of uplifting. We all waited for you for centuries. Like, it's all kind of fucked. It is all kind of fucked. And I'm not quite sure if I vibe with any of it. I don't know. It's, like, it tries to, like, I referred to it earlier as turning the whole thing on its head, right? Turning the bit in 116 about March on its head. But that's just looking at Bond's she committed suicide like it was her own free will. Like, she just did it. But, like, she had accomplices. Adults, you know, accepted that path. And that is fucked. That is really, really fucked. And I hope they have a reckoning for that. Because I don't want this to be something that the narrative just sort of plays off. Like, we'll see how Fushi reacts. Fushi might just be like, are you shitting me? You killed March? Which he should. But the fact that, like, we go through 2 more pages and Fushi doesn't really say anything, I don't know. I mean, Fushi kind of freezes at that. So maybe he'll just, like, he's just too stunned to sort of speak before Ban goes on. But, like, that's fucked. And Fushi, I think, needs to call them out for that. And I'm curious it will be he'll take the exact wrong lesson from that. Because, like I kind of said, comparing Fushi and March here, Fushi also needs to learn to allow people to move on in the same way March needed to move on. And Fushi himself also needs to move on eventually. I'm worried that he's going to take the lesson, do whatever it takes to keep things as they are. which would be very bad. Very good storytelling, but like very bad for Fushi. I don't know. This is... You ever have those chapters where you just have to sit back and you're like, that was a fucking chapter, wasn't it? That's my thoughts on this. It happened. It was definitely a thing. I don't know how this is gonna play out going forward, but it sure was a time. Bon, Hiro, and Tonari got a 4-year-old to commit suicide, and we're just supposed to kind of move on with that. That's where I draw the line. That's where I'm just like, hold up, we need to have a reckoning about this at some point. I hope that's where we're going with this, because God, I don't fucking know. I don't know. We'll see eventually. I hope we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. I was really into last chapter, and this chapter has just gotten me sort of on pins and needles. Like, where the fuck are you going with this, Oima? I don't know. Call Bon out, Fushi. That's what needs to happen right now. But yeah, that's all I gotta say for this video. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe. You know, do whatever makes you happy, you know? And remember, your life is your own, okay? Bye!